welcome to this talk. Give it on the first one. Yes. So I'm going to talk about products.
Mouse you can keep it there so that it's easy for sir to manage.
See, nowadays we use many IT services. For example, you use banking services, right, for checking your balance, or transfer funds and like that. And also use IT services for booking tickets, movie tickets, or the bus, flight tickets, and so on. Also order products from online stores. Not only that, nowadays we even order food and get it delivered to your home without even stepping out from confines of the home. So all these services we have been using it, and they are making our life very easier. So as users, what do we expect from these IT services, application services? So we expect they to be available always, daytime or nighttime, anytime, right? And then we expect very good performance from them. Services cannot ask I am processing now, please wait for a couple of minutes, right? We want like immediately, like kids. Okay. And another thing is no transaction failures. Fine, IT services are provided, but we don't expect any failures. That's the worst thing that can happen. In fact, I have been using for the last since probably 1997. I keep facing these problems even now. So, how these services are maintained? Who maintains these services? So there is a separate data centers, or some team working inside the company, and they are always look at these services and make sure that they are always available and they are working as expected. And what is the biggest nightmare for them? Anytime this one server is down, okay, that's a big problem for them. Or performance degradation. Initially it will be okay, but after some time it's very difficult to use. In fact, I have faced this problem even recently with, of course, not a professional business companies, but rather some other companies. And of course, there should not be any transaction failures. That is also a big problem for IT operations. So what happens if such problems are there? Customers lose confidence in those services, right? And they move to they may move to competitors' services, and the companies lose business and revenue, and probably even reputation. So it's very critical for these digital business and the e-business companies to make sure that the IT services they provide work as expected. Right? So what do they do? How do they do? They use various infrastructure monitoring tools. Some companies not only use just one, maybe they will be using even 5, 10 tools to monitor, if any problem is there, then they try to resolve it as soon as possible, to make sure that they work as expected. So I am going to talk exactly about one such monitoring tool with which I have been associated with for the last 3 years. So now let me tell you your expectations from this talk, or my goals of this talk. First of all, I am going to introduce you to the topic of infrastructure monitoring briefly, and then I am going to describe architecture of monitoring tool called Surma. Actually, it is going to get into production either this week or maybe next week. And then finally, I discuss briefly the trends in the area of monitoring tools. After all, this conference is for trends in engineering, right? Okay. So with this background and expectations set, let's jump into introduction to IT infrastructure monitoring. Okay. So what is IT? I think every one of you. But I want to make sure that IT means information technology and not income tax or anything like that. And what infrastructure? Hardware and software. And then what is to be monitored? Availability, performance, and the failures of transactions. I mean, these are the critical things that one should monitor. Now, why do we monitor? Of course, you already now know why we should monitor. To make sure services are always available, to make sure performance is as expected, to detect and resolve failures, to plan capacity in case of performance is not as expected, to detect and resolve unexpected usage like fraud, security breaches, and so on. Okay. There is a very good apt quote from Lord Kelvin. So what he says is, if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. Right? First you should know where you stand. Then you can, try to improve it. And this is exactly true in case of infrastructure monitoring, as well as in our daily life. And many aspects you can apply this. Now, how we are going to monitor? Using monitoring tools and measuring various parameters of your IT services. Now let us get into a little bit more details. What is IT infrastructure? So it consists of hardware like computers, switches, routers, and sensors and various other hardware. Then the software, it includes OS, virtual machines, and services, applications, database servers, web servers, and so on. And also it includes networks, your LANs and internet connectivity, and so many others. And in fact, this infrastructure also includes data centers or server rooms in companies. It also includes operational team, the team which monitors and takes care of these data center related activities. Okay. But for the time being, for the start, we don't include those two items. So this infrastructure can be internal or external to the company. It can be private cloud or in public cloud. In fact, what are the tools with which I have been associated is being deployed in private cloud. So before proceeding, I will introduce 2 or 3 definitions because that is required for my next subtopic. One is a target. What is target? Target is anything that you want to monitor. And monitoring tools allow you to define targets, or they are clever enough. Some monitor tools are clever enough to automatically discover them for you. So examples targets are here. One is computer target. Say I give you name, say DBCom120, whatever it is. So I want to monitor a computer system, so that is my target. I want to. Then there could be a database server instance. Say MySQL is running on one particular machine. I want to monitor it. So I gave a name, say MySQL120, so that is a target. Similarly, database itself. I want to monitor particular, say online store, database. Or it could be a web server, say Tomcat1, something like that. Or sometimes you want to monitor even websites to make sure that website is accessible and all pages, what are the links that are there, they are really working. And actually each page contains the data that you expect. So you may want to monitor websites or services. They are nothing but applications which are running in the background. Okay, or some applications which are user and facing. Okay, those applications. So whatever you want to monitor, you call it as a target. Now what parameters we have to monitor? They are called metrics. So what is a metric? A metric is anything that you can be measured. So example metrics are, for example, I just want to know status of one target. Is it up, down, or is it reachable or not? So that could be a one metric. And memory utilization. So it's important to monitor memory utilization of individual machines to make sure that your applications or services run as expected and they don't stall because of lack of memory. And for example, another example is free space in your file system. Right? For your services and applications to run, you have to make sure that you have enough disk space. Database table space utilization. Of course, this is valid for some only certain database systems. So make sure that whenever the application is adding a lot of records or rows into a table, for example, you have to make sure that there is enough space for adding new records. And for example, this is totally different. Number of cars booked or sold. There is a business perspective that could be one metric. Okay. So essentially, if you want to monitor these metrics, you have to define these metrics for each target. So there is another kind of metric called the key performance indicator. KPI measures the performance and success of a business objective. For example, CPU utilization is need not be, most likely it's not a business objective. Rather, number of cars booked per month or per day or per year, that could be your key performance indicator. That shows how your business is performing. So a KPI can be a metric, and not every metric is a KPI. So example KPIs like successful payments that are appended through your software. For example, that could be your business goal or you want to measure. Or support tickets. Support ticket in the sense if there is any problem in your department, IT related problem like disk is not working or for example, or it could be application related. Some transaction is not going through. Right? The proper way of getting it resolved is raising one ticket. That's a professional way of doing it. So authorized persons will attend to that and solve it. The other KPI could be like number of total cars sold. So these are the KPIs. So essentially, the monitoring tools should be able to even monitor this KPIs as well. So what does the monitoring involve in terms of the definitions that I gave? One is observing metric values. Right? We said every target will have some metrics and you want to monitor. So what is monitoring? Essentially, you have to observe metric values to see whether they have values are as expected or is there any problem. Analyzing metric data presented through various charts and tables, and taking actions based on alerts and notifications. So whenever there is a problem, sir, in one metric value, like for example, memory utilization is more than expected, say almost 90%, for example, and you don't want to, that kind of situation, then monitor tools raise an alert or notifications. So in your dashboard, you will see, alerts from various targets, and you may get even email notifications or the SMS, whatever that is provided, so that you can take corrective actions. Okay. So this is the brief introduction to infrastructure related information. Now let us get into architecture of one particular tool. This tool is called SAMA. Okay, server monitor. So what is this particular tool? This tool is an enterprise level IT service monitoring and management tool. It provides IT service operations and administration capabilities for business applications, databases and operating systems. So what it means is, this tool allows you to define the targets of these three types only. Of course, there are tools, they provide n number of types of targets that you can work with. So what does this tool allow? It allows you to define targets, right? Because you have to monitor them. Then define metrics for each target. And then collection intervals. What it means is the tool should be able to get metrics. Now when the tool is supposed to get metrics? Continuously, or every interval, like every 5 seconds, every say 1 minute or 5 minutes, that you can define. Okay. Then you can define thresholds with severity levels. So what it means is, you want to know whether metric value is in the expected range, and you can tell the system that that's what this thresholds for. And then you can specify severity levels. In case, for example, memory utilization is more than 70. If it crosses 70, you want to get an alert, warning alert, saying that yes, you have to look into this. The other one is, for example, if it goes beyond 90, and you have to be more alert. You can say critical alert. So with different colors, then it will show you these are the alerts. Then you can attend to those issues. And you can define users and privileges, because only certain users are expected to do any changes to targets. Not everybody should be. Then you can start agents. Agent is actually one piece. I will explain it later. It's a part of this monitoring tool. So it allows you to start agents. Then there are servers associated with this tool. Servers, and even you can start or stop applications. And what is the final day? How do you monitor it? Through it displays target status, various metrics, right? And alerts using the tables and charts. So this is the brief functionality of this particular tool. I'll show you one something called dashboard. It's like car dashboard, where you can see what is the speed, what is the fuel level, very high level information, right? To make sure that whether you can drive further. So this for example, this supports multiple sites or data centers. You can say 1, 2, 3 like that. And for example, currently it shows CPU usage metric, and then memory usage, how much it is, and then disk usage, and then database table space usage. Then these are some of just 2 screenshots. One is event viewer, nothing but alerts. So there are fatal alert, there is a critical alert, 2 critical alerts, and 1 warning. For example, if you see warning, there is a memory utilization which is more than 70. Okay, that's why there is a warning. It also has some capability of analyzing logs. Logs are system logs. If you work with Linux, you will come to know that syslog are messages that will contain a lot of messages from different applications. So any application for this side should write status of these applications into the log file, so that if any problem is there, one can look into this log file and see what the problem is, more details than just simply this alert, and you will, so that will enable you to fix the issues. Now let's get into actual architecture of this particular tool. So this monitoring tool essentially consists of 4 different pieces. One is servers, another is agent, then various plugins, and there is a GUI application. That's a user interface, graphical user interface. So at the bottom, there is actually a component called the server, actual monitor tools, server programs. So there is a monitor push server and monitor pull server. There are 2 servers. We'll come to know why there are 2. And then on the left side, left top, there is a one, say, computer system, application computer system, where app 1 is running. And similarly, there is another application on a different computer system, say application computer 2. One application is running, for example. Then there is a separate computer for a certain database that you want to monitor. Okay, these are the targets that you want to monitor. On a one computer system, you may have multiple targets. And the last one is, web server. You may want to monitor that as well. So that web server has the GUI application, monitor GUI app. Okay. And then finally, whatever the metrics that this tool collects, it puts into one database. So the last bottom one, monitor DB computer, that's what I call it. So there is a database server, and it stores in a database called say metrics database. Now what is this agent do? Agent has to be installed on all the systems from which you want to get metrics. So what does this monitor pool server do is, it is going to make a request to the agent. Okay, at defined intervals. Remember, for each metric you can define intervals anyway. So based on the interval that is already defined, this pool server is going to make a request to agent, and the agent gets gets values of metrics that are requested.
These agents can individually be configured?
There is not configure in the sense, really there is nothing like configuration. But I will come to know there are plugins. It uses different plugins. And depending on the plugin, the functionality, depending on the targets from which you get the metrics. That depends upon the plugins that you use. So there is no explicit configuration as such. You simply run. Actually, that is also a background process. So there is another server, monitor push server. See, that is for the cases where sometimes the applications you cannot control. Hello? So there are some applications which you cannot control them. They would like to send metrics whenever they want. All the applications you don't provide that flexibility, right? So the monitor push server is meant for that. So what it means is applications push metrics to this particular server. That is the idea. So so there is a different plugin for that. No agent. Okay. So that applications, the second configure uses this plugin to send the metrics whenever it wants. So that is for push server is meant for that. So the GUI application just displays dashboard and various information related to the targets and metrics that you have monitored. So this is the basic architecture. Let me tell you about agent. Agent is supposed to get metrics based on the targets. So agent works based on the plugins. For example, you can have, if you want to get metrics from Linux OS, okay, then use one Linux OS plugin. If you want to get metrics from, say, MySQL database or server, then you need a different plugin. Like that, you can simply add whatever plugins that you want. So whenever a request from a server comes to the agent, and based on the target for which these metrics have to be returned, agent decides which plugin to use, and then requests the plugin to get the actual metric values, and then sends it. And all, if for example there is a request for 10 different metrics, right? So agent will send all of them at one shot with one network interaction to the server. Then there is one more situation. If you see the leftmost one, agentless. Sometimes in the production environments, people who are managing this production systems, they won't allow you to install any other software for security reasons or to avoid any performance impact and so on. So first we have to monitor those cases also, those kind of applications. So for that, for such cases, we will be having the plugins at the server itself. Monitor the full server.
What is this?
Okay, that's one. Yeah. So what is this monitor pull server? It uses server plugins instead of agent plugins because there is no agent. But the monitor pull server should be able to get metrics from any different kinds of such applications. So there is a provision for adding monitor, adding the server plugins, and then it's based on what API these particular applications expose. For example, if it is a REST API is allowed, then use REST API and write a plugin for that and get metrics. Or if they use some web services, then use those things. Or their own proprietary API, then use that one. So whatever it is that you want. Because after all, you need to implement just only 5 different functions or methods, Java methods to interface to any application. For example, Tomcat, for example, it uses REST API to supply metrics. So we have plugins, agent plugins, then server plugins, and different kind of applications which cannot be controlled. They have their different plugins to supply metrics. Now just one more slide, 2 more slides related to architecture. Just give an idea of how the full server was designed. So we have multiple threads of metric collector components, and we have something called heartbeat checker, that is to get just a status and to say generally 3 seconds, 2 seconds. You want to know whether the machine is up or down. Okay. So we have a separate component to get only status metrics from agents, and we have the separate metric collector. That's one component of this server, and other component is the metric writer, which simply puts into the database, and the one more component called alarm manager. So what happens is whenever the server wants to get metrics, it uses this metric collector objects to get the metrics from agents, and once they are received, it immediately checks whether any violation of the thresholds, and then creates appropriate data structures and then puts into alarm queues for further passing by alarm manager, and immediately returns. Okay, because you cannot make a metric collector to wait, because it is busy collecting metrics based on your intervals. You can't wait for more time, because alarm manager takes some more time. It takes some time to process those alarms. Similarly, actual metric values are put into metric queue, separate metric queue on the left side, and metric writer reads the metric values from the queues and then puts into the database, so that metric collector can immediately look for targets and then get metrics from them. Then another important thing is local and geo redundancy of databases and monitor tools. So we said we use monitor tool to monitor other services and applications and other infrastructure elements, right? And if the monitor tool itself goes down, then who is going to monitor? So it is very important to design your architecture, rather deployment architecture, to make sure that there is a redundancy in monitors. So for example, at one installation, they have 2 data centers, data center 1 and data center 2. Both are geographically separated. So in case of one center goes down for any reason, you can monitor from other data center. So and there is also local redundancy. What it means, if locally something goes down, right, you should be able to take care. So that's why at particular installation there are 2 monitor tools, 2 different, actually there's virtual machines. So monitor tool is deployed into virtual machine in each data center. But at any time, only one will be active, other will be simply dormant. So whenever there is a need, then other will be take over monitoring. So this is about the tool itself. But the tool stores all the metrics in one database. Now you have to have redundancy for the database also. So that's why what they have used is 3 different virtual machines and 3 DBMS instances and 3 databases. And these databases that in yellow color I have shown, they are put into one cluster. So anything that is returned to any database gets replicated across 3 databases. So if one goes down, you will have at least 2 others. One the main thing and another is for the like a copy, backup, something. So that's what is local intent. Similar exactly in the other one. Now what happens in case if the 2 go down, right, or data center itself goes down or then the other one, whatever the running monitor, it recognizes that there is a problem with the other data center, and that monitor in the second data center take control of all the targets of this particular monitor tool and starts collecting metrics from that. Okay. And similarly, now this database, each database has exactly the same data. In the other data center also will have the same data, because when it takes control, we should make sure that it also has the same data.
Consistent.
So for that reason, these 2 clusters are configured as one single cluster. That means 6 databases in one single cluster. So any change done to any of the databases will be there in other data center also, in all the databases. So that's called geo-redundancy. So I have just one more slide. So it is something like this. Monitor the computer a DC1 which is active. Suppose it's getting metrics from T1, targets T1, T1 to T1. Another one is getting from T2, T2 to T2. And if this goes down, okay, this monitor tool will take control of these 2 and then start getting. And once you fix this one, after some time, you fix a problem with this particular data center, and then it comes alive. So as soon as it allows, it detects that, oh, this computer system is already alive. So it stops collecting metrics from these targets. So go to this. And another, actually these 2 data centers are always busy, even though they are meant for taking control of other one. It's not that idle. One data center is idle, another data center only is running. If that's the way we do, then we don't know when something happens, whether there is going to work or not. So that's why they have designed such that half of the targets are assigned to this one, half of the targets are assigned to that one. And both will be running continuously, and they will take over whenever it is needed. So that's all about this architecture of this tool. The idea behind giving this is maybe it is helpful to some of you. Yeah. Now this monitoring tool trends. This is the last part of the session. So we talked about IT infrastructure monitoring tools. We'll start with that. Actually, there are some more primitive tools, but we will not discuss that one. So what is this? What do these tools do? IT infrastructure monitoring tools. Primary function is to get the status of targets, get the metrics, and display so that IT operations team who are monitoring these metrics, they can take action if required. So if there is an incident, say in a data center, for example, what I mean is any disruption to the service, this IT operation team comes to know about it and then try to resolve it. That means their approach to problem solving is reactive. Problem happens, then only they have to fix it, like firefighting mode. So this is not a good way of running a business. So that's why the monitoring tool vendors, they add more capabilities to these tools using approach of IT operations analytics or IT OA tools. That's somewhere around 2010, around that period. So what they added is they added capabilities like predicting predicting metric values using predictive analytics, and how they are predicted using historical data. There's a lot of metrics data collected, so they use that one and then predict, so that, for example, if a very simple metric is say disk space, free disk space. Suppose if you monitor its curves like this, coming down, right? And at one point it's going to stop, everything is going to stop. So instead of reacting to that once the problem occurs, so this tool will predict, say in the next say 10 minutes something is going to happen, or next few hours, or the next few days, so that operation team can proactively fix that problems. So that's what the ITOA is all about. Someone has light capabilities, but not up to that, because that was never a need for that. Actually, it was developed for one particular customer. He needs only that much, nothing more than that. Okay, but big data centers, they found the problem that even this is not good enough for various issues, the challenges they faced. So that's why they added more capabilities to their monitoring tools, like artificial intelligence and machine learning, and they called such tools as AI ops tools, artificial intelligence for IT operations. This is around 2016. So there are already many products. They claim they have this one. Okay. So what is the challenge? Why these have come up? Because of the one challenge is silent IT ops. What it means is, as I already mentioned, some big data centers, they don't use just one monitoring tool. They use multiple tools based on the domain. For example, there are specific tools for monitoring application performance, where their focus is that. And there are network monitoring tools separately. And there are various other kinds of like security. Their job is only to monitor security of your infrastructure. So because of this, each monitoring tool started collecting the data. So they have islands of different data. So they found it very difficult to have single view with a single dashboard monitoring everything related. So they don't have. So IT operations team had very difficult time in understanding effects of one IT infrastructure element causes some problem. What is the effect of some other infrastructure element and so on. That's one. Another thing is complex and dynamic. Application systems, or rather deployment architecture of the applications, as well as infrastructure inside the data centers, they have become complex over the period of time. Complex in the sense, not only just a hardware, physical machines. Now people started using virtual machines to reduce costs, right? And also containers. Applications are deployed, as containers, so that you can easily scale. And also in cloud, private cloud and public cloud. So it has become very difficult for the IT operations team to monitor, not only for them, even tools were not capable of taking care of this complexity. Other one is dynamic nature. The application deployment architectures have become dynamic in the sense, if there is any demand for their IT services, certain period of the time, for example, during festival season or holiday season, right, there will be a lot of demand for the IT services. So to scale that performance, people started adding more infrastructure elements, deploying virtual machines or containers, something like that. And these tools, existing monitoring tools, were not capable of adapting to that dynamic nature. Also, when there is no demand, there is no point in keeping these added infrastructure elements as sitting ducks. They consume power and your time also. So they want to remove those things. So these tools should be capable of automatically monitoring those additional elements and stop when there are no more elements rather than giving errors like that. Another thing is exponential growth of data. So various tools keep on collecting lot of data and analyzing using existing tools, most likely relational database systems that they use, they have found it very difficult because they don't scale up. But only today I read one article that says that now they are trying to get that scaling even with relational database systems, which have been in use for so many years. Okay, using some Apache Spark related technology, somebody said, oh, they can scale. Okay, so because of the data, so that's why they wanted some more capability. They are want to improve. Other one, the last one is stress to IT operations teams. Because of all these issues, the IT operations teams, they were stressed a lot. So vendors wanted to give better tools. So to solve all these problems, they started using applying artificial intelligence and machine language and the big data, because of the lot of data has to be analyzed, and then using the advanced analytics like machine learning or predictive analytics, descriptive analytics, and quantitative analytics too, and then visualization. That's also very important. Not only have all these things, but they should be able to, like single view of their entire IT infrastructure, able to see all the infrastructure elements graphically here, and also able to see the dependencies between elements. For example, one service may depend on some other services, right? If there is a problem, you should be able to know that it is because of the other, some IT service, like that. So a lot of visualization techniques, and also automation. That's mainly for the last one, stress to IT operations. So what they want is, they want to make operations more efficient by automating as many processes as possible. For example, if I'll give the same example of that disk space. There is no disk space, right? It's keep on coming down. So that's a very minor issue that can be tackled automatically. You can make for example, AIOps tools to run one script, okay, and then get rid of all unwanted files from the disk, and then make the space available. I mean, that's just one example. Another thing is that whenever there is a network failure, for example, between two systems, right? It's not necessarily that the operations team has to figure out when they or raise a ticket to get the problem fixed. So these tools themselves automatically can raise a ticket, so that responsible person will attend to that problem, thus reducing the stress on the IT operation. So these are the friendly AIOps platforms. This is a slightly little more details. So what do they do is, there are 4 stages of monitoring. Acquiring metrics and all the data, aggregate, get all of them, put into one database, right? And then analyze using big data and machine learning. And then last one below, act. Act as much as possible automatically. So these AIOps platforms or tools, what they are supposed to do, they are supposed to ingest a lot of historical data, not only just metrics but logs, right? Then text data. For example, this should be able to monitor even social media comments. For example, if customer is using one particular product, say buying online store, so that person may add something comment about that. So IT monitoring tools should be able to capture that and then give to present it that either good thing or bad thing about that particular product. So they should be capable of taking analyzing such data using most likely AI techniques like NLP. Okay. So not only these different kinds of data but different sources. So there are already, if the existing tools are there, this particular AIOps platform should be capable of getting data from multiple other tools. Then real-time streaming of data for analysis. Okay. Then not only this, they should be able to engage with IT service management. Like I talked about, if there is any problem inside the data center, to fix a problem, you have to raise one ticket. Okay. So these tools should be able to engage with the ITSM databases, which contains asset information about asset that is there inside data center, and also various software and their versions and things like that. So what it seems is that that's a more or less manually done. Okay, IT operations team or ITSM related team enter data manually, and there is a scope for a lot of errors. So since these apps tools are so clever that can figure out what the software is running, which version of the software, and so on. So what they suggest is, why not these tools update the database. So the other one is finally automate as much as possible. So by doing this one, you get continuous insights. I mentioned the right side of this slide, like discover patterns in the data and prediction. You should be able to predict what is going to happen to that. So based on the historical anomaly detection. So they should be able to look at, for example, logs to see, is there any anomaly related to, say, for example, metrics or any message, like memory utilization, right? Like, sometimes it may happen that, even though we decide that, 70% threshold, you put it for a warning, and 90% say it's a critical warning. But, during peak hours, it may be okay, even if to cross 90. That may not be error. So if you fix thresholds, 70 and 90, so during peak times, even if it reaches beyond 90, say 95, still it might be okay. So if that is the case, now why should we get a warning? Alert, why should we get alert? So what they suggest is, this AI Ops platform should be able to detect these change of behavior and then put threshold accordingly, so that this IT Ops team don't get flooded with lot of alerts. I read somewhere saying that sometimes you get thousands of alerts. IT operation team should be able to analyze and take action. First of all, they have to understand and know what is the problem, whether they should attend or not. So they were just here. And then root cause analysis and prescriptive advice. What I mean to say is, automatically use what should be done if there is any problem, right? What should be done? So these tools should be able to tell that. Like for disk space, okay, fine, you clear the disk space. Now how do you do that? Let the AIOps tool to execute probably some scripts. So that's it. So essentially the trend is that these monitoring tool vendors trying to incorporate as many features of this AIOps platform as possible. And there are already probably more than 20 or even maybe 50 different vendors. They claim that they have all this support. And in fact, in Bangalore there is one such company which says they have this one. And it was mentioned by Gartner Research also that this is one of the tools in the world. Okay, that's all. I think I have come to end of this talk. Let me just summarize. So monitoring IT infrastructure is critical for the businesses, right? Very, very critical. And availability, performance, and load transaction rates are very important. And this what are the tools that you select? You should be able to work with agents and the agentless systems. And monitoring just metrics is not good enough. We should be able to monitor the KPIs as well. ITOA tools provide proactive actions, but AIOps is the next generation of ITOA tools using modern technologies like actually this is quite good. AI and EML. So this is all about the talk today. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, you can WhatsApp to me or send it to my email. And this is the website of that particular product, Salman, http salman-its.com. and probably it's going to get production this month end or next. So if you have any questions, I can take.
I have one question. How difficult is it to actually build this kind of new trends that you have said, like wherein it automatically configures the levels at which they should, that kind of thing, really is it
Yes, it's
possible
possible.
now?
Yes,
These
it's possible.
days,
No, in fact,
with the machine learning?
there are tools like Splunk, okay, MookSoft.
Yeah.
Then there are some other fixed stream, like that they said they came, they support this. In fact, we thought about, but we should first implement what customer wants
Yes.
rather than doing it. I think it's a possibility.
It's possible, but probably scaling of that and managing with the real scaling in real time might be a bit challenging in
So
such
I don't know
situations.
really how true it is. They
Because,
claim many vendors claim that they have this. I'm not sure because I never use this.
Sir, one more thing. Already many monitoring tools are there, like Microsoft
Hundreds.
and
Hundreds
Oracle.
or maybe more than yeah.
How this tool is different from the
Now it's actually the company which I work, they did not build it just for the sake of it. Okay. So the company already used Oracle product, Enterprise Manager, for one telecom company in the US. So they have been using it. Even I also contributed to that one. They were using it, but finally there was a problem in upgrading to next version. So they had a problem and they didn't get proper support. So that's why we said we probably okay, we do it.
Probably
So
the
that's
earlier
why-
tools never thought of virtual machines and in the real-time cloud environment, probably the earlier tools, they never thought of virtual machines kind of environment.
Yeah.
But today, that is a requirement.
That's a requirement
When you are talking of data
yeah,
centers,
right.
you can be talking of monitoring even in a distributed manner over distributed servers.
Right.
So virtual machines goes down to a greater granularity.
In fact, this tool is currently deployed in OpenStack cloud platform.
Okay, okay.
That's what it is. I don't know how many physical machines are there, but there are total, I think, 30 virtual machines.
Okay.
They don't use containers.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe next level is good containers probably.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for enlightening us about the monitoring tools. I request our professor, Mrs. Dr. P.V. Sudha ma'am, to present the memento. Currently, Chairperson, BOS of Information Technology, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hello.
From ASL DRDO, Hyderabad. Ma'am is here to present a talk on impact of AI on emerging trends in technology. Dr. Preeti Chandra, head cybersecurity governance at ASL, has been serving DRDO for the last 25 years. She is a computer science postgraduate from Devi Ahalya Vishwavidyalaya and doctorate from Central University, Hyderabad in artificial intelligence. Her areas of research include artificial intelligence, machine learning, data mining, cybersecurity, software engineering, networking, and IT infrastructure, and has been a frequent contributor to the academic and research innovation activities at Uspania University and also Central University at their local engineering colleges also. Her vast experience on DRDO systems for armed forces include design, development, testing, deployment on mobile ground support systems, integrated security surveillance systems, and camouflaging for strategic missile program, and also support counter for measure control systems for various integrated electronic warfare programs. She has also designed and developed a virtual assembly system, vision support system, GI-based moving map system, ERP system for e-governance, case-based project lifecycle using structured and object-oriented paradigms on Windows and Solaris and Linux platforms. This experience has molded her to work across multiple disciplines in collaboration with DRDO labs, PSUs and industry partners. She has published around 25 research papers in international journals and conferences. She is a regular reviewer in international journals and conferences. She has guided BTech, MTech and PhD students. Thank you, ma'am. I welcome you to the dais. Principal ma'am. Ma'am has published several papers in national and international journals and conferences, and she is a lifetime member of the Computer Society of India. Ma'am has received Best Teacher Award by Government of Telangana, India in the year 2017.
A regular visitor to this department, my face must be very familiar. All the technologies which are state of art right now, from the point of view of artificial intelligence. The technology as a whole may have so many perceptions, but what is relevant for our AI and machine learning? Is that fine for the audience here? Yeah? So I will not go into much of the depth so that you have very simple take-homes. In any case, I am leaving my presentation here. Please take it, and whenever you ponder over a question, please refer to my presentation, which is a very simple one, for you to have a kickstart in AI and machine learning related problems. Okay? Now see here. I don't have any one. In the first slide here, what I'm trying to say is, as we should know, we are always talking about AI, machine learning. We started our journey in Industrial Revolution, and here where we are today with respect to it is called Fourth Industrial Revolution. People are aware?
Industry 4.0.
Huh? That we should acknowledge where we are. So that is the reason why I said it is fourth generation of the Industrial Revolution, and these communication technologies 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G is taken us from where to where. Okay? And of course 5G yet to come, and a lot of connectivity. The impact of all these, is inverting the HR pyramid across all the organizations. You take government, high value jobs are more in number now. That is the changing profile of the HR. That's a good news for the upcoming professionals. In fact, if you are able to stick to your core and get a core job, whichever field it is, you will definitely climb to this higher level of the pyramid very fast. Not in terms of years, in terms of your expertise. So that is the changing profile of HR now because of the advent of such technologies. Now here, as we all know, all are CS here, or other core people are also here? Only CS. So all of you are aware of this? AI, machine learning and deep learning. Okay. So with this, cyber security is creating every day. Not even a single day goes without threats being reported. And across the world, you see, earlier days we used to have same attack being used repeatedly. Now the attack profiles are changing every second. So the amount of readiness what we require at our end to detect and respond to it, or maybe prevent, it has a different requirement altogether. That we should keep in mind. So these are the challenges of cyber security that we are facing here, everywhere these days. And this is the profile attack surface. So whenever we are applying AI or machine learning, we should keep this in mind. Everything is dynamic. The attack surface is no more static. Now, so many nomenclature words from where machine learning is basically at the intersection of so many data mining, statistics, information theory, database. All are brothers and sisters. And in fact, other than machine learning, you will not find any technology or the set of techniques interacting with so many disciplines. Thank you. And anybody knows what is deep learning here? What is neural network? We are aware of it because ma'am would have taught. Huh?
They're not my students at conference.
Okay, fine. It's part of the curriculum at most of the places, right? see a very logical thinking. For me to deduce whether a given figure is a square or not, first I think whether it has 4 sides, and second I'll think whether it is a closed figure, all the sides are perpendicular and equal. This is a logical way of thinking. And basically, if you map it to deep learning, these are the features at different levels. So the neural networks at the first level will look for features called sides. At the next level, it will check for closeness, whether the figure is closed or not, and hence quote. Similarly, a very popular example quoted in most of the research papers is a cat and dog. So cats and dogs features will be abstracted at the first level. Whereas in traditional neural network, it was not so. Features were not extracted. You don't talk about features in a hierarchical fashion. There, the whole pixel map is given, and like a black magic, you keep on programming, different layers, and at the end of the day, you start training with whatever accuracy and precision. But deep learning here is giving you different levels of, I should say, abstraction. Now here, these are very basic, I wanted to put them as, lines, but then the take home figure is better, I felt. Supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement. What is supervised learning?
Learning with the system.
Learning with the teacher. Unsupervised, freelance. You learn by your mistakes and nobody to tell you, this is right or wrong. But here we have a teacher, an agent is rewarded or for his positive or negative steps. That is called reinforcement learning. Basically, why I'm touching these, supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement learning and deep learning. These 4, if we are able to apply it to different problem domains, we are done with it. You can draw analogy from anywhere to anywhere. Okay? So supervised learning, when we talk about categorical data, it becomes classification. When we try to predict a continuous variable like salary, temperature and all, it becomes regression. And we all of us know market basket analysis, items appearing, item set, frequent item set. That's part of association learning. Association basically, and clustering, k-means and all, the centroid, and then how far, basically it's a research on the similarity measures. No more the conventional similarity measures are used. Depending on our algorithm, every day we are defining new similarity measures. That's very challenging, interesting as well, but you get into the problem if you're not able to converge things. Here, the maze. Our favorite maze, if you're going in the right direction, you will reach, basically we talk about global maximum. And the kind of problems forecast using supervised, discover the patterns which are hidden in the data using unsupervised, and here like a child, I'm learning a sequence, a series of actions. It's not a standalone learning. We have labeled data here. For the supervised learning, we don't have a labeled data here. And then this is more or less a trial and error, which, the general methodology for driverless cars and, game theory. Yeah, this is here. So all of you must be familiar with these algorithms for the supervised learning. Most popular one is the k nearest neighbor, easily programmable, understandable. If somebody is able to go up to regression and random forest, you are done. This is basically, you are touching the boundary of machine learning. Unsupervised k-means, a priori and c-means, and this is q-learning and SASA. Risk evaluation, forecast sales, recommendation of the systems, anomaly detection. Now, anomaly detection is the one which is heavily used for cyber security, for identifying hidden attacks. The attack profiles may not be known to you, so you can't label always. You need to understand, you need to derive from the data. Self-driving cars and gaming engines using reinforcement. Here I have use cases. I need to, depending on the data, I need to decide whether a bank needs to decide whether they approve the loan or not based on this labeled data. So the obvious choice is k nearest neighbor. Take it from me that, you know, the industry is really using all these. These are not anymore, you know, textbook concepts. They look very simple in the textbook, but if you go to the industry, they are the pillars there. Simple logic is turning, you know, oceans of data direction. Similarly, here, this is everyday example of Uber, Ola. In how much time you are going to reach. So if you know the speed and the distance and certain more parameters like traffic data, you can predict. And similarly, popular and non-popular movies can I identify based on their average and the likeliness on the social media. These are very popular use cases. Market basket analysis is very common, and Q-learning for the game theory. Now, in fact, this is very close to my PhD problem also. So this is familiar now. Whenever you see layer-based deep learning, you should look for adjoining label of the features. Edge is extraction, then facial features, then the face, and then you should be able to recognize the face. Okay? Whereas neural networks, traditional neural networks, this entire thing is not abstracted out like that. You may have hidden layers there, but this feature-based abstraction is not there. And that is where deep learning is calling for very high level of computation and high level of accuracy also. Now this is a typical traffic scenario. If I have to solve this problem using machine learning approach, what is the input? This is the object with the bounding box. I do object recognition and give the input to the machine learning algorithm as labeled data, and finally I get an answer that which object is where, and it can predict where it will be after so many seconds, after absorbing so many frames of data. But when it comes to deep learning, what do? We give this as a pixel map, the entire frame, and different levels here will extract the edges, then adjoining edges will extract the boxes, and hence the trend they will be able to predict. So that is a basic difference in the problem solving approach. I hope I'm making sense. I'm sure all of you are already into this field, but you know, very simple concepts I'm just trying to put across. I hope, if not today, maybe later on when you ponder about it, maybe you may remember this slide and take it home. So if we see intelligence, how it has evolved over a period of time, we had assisted intelligence, basically some level of automation. Then we had augmented, wherein you know business strategy and humans inform the machines and machines are informing the humans. It's a give and take dialogue. Now autonomous intelligence is we have autonomous cars, Tesla, and things like that. Now here, Boeing 737. Okay, the whole world is in trouble, saying that there is a problem. Whenever there is a nosedive, it is not listening to the the pilot's instruction. Fine, there is a problem. I have a different perception towards that. That, of course, we have incurred the loss, we may incur the loss, that is all apart and the updates will come. But look at one perception. That is a scenario which is trying to handle is the anti-stalling. If it stalls, it is trying to address in that fashion. And probably it is a first step towards autonomous piloting. If you look at it positively, of course, I will not get, many quotes for that, but the same scenario, if you try to, visualize and draw the analogy from a different point of view, you get different solutions. Of course, this 737 problem is a matter of some time, maybe a week or 10 days, the update will come, things will start back to normal. But such scenarios are handled there towards autonomy, which is taking our intelligence to a different level. Now, all of you are aware of Siri? Huh? Now, Siri, all that, matching is taking place at the cloud level. Now, what Apple has come out to facilitate Siri as an edge device, there's something called AI-enabled chip, Bionic. Have you heard of it? Yes. So that for that computation, we do not fall onto the cloud. The chip handles it. Similarly, Tesla, though a failure, it is coming back for driverless cars, Netflix, and these are the different, Uber. When we book a taxi, we are able to, that scaled up pricing. They have a predictive modeling technique in place. They are able to predict which time the prices will go up. So they are able to reposition their vehicles there so that the surge pricing comes down. That is, the engine I think is called Michelangelo. So for us, it is just, it is all that, learning algorithms is not visible to the end user. But that is what is happening out there. Okay? Now these are the various scenarios in cybersecurity. Basically, we are trying to catch the spams, and machine learning in a particular domain doesn't help as a single tool. It has to be, communicating and integrating with all other softwares in place to find an integrated solution. So please don't go with an impression that if I write a machine learning algorithm, I implement, my job is done. No, in the actual industry domain, you got to integrate with number of things out there to prove it as a solution. Can we close IoT vulnerabilities? So many IoT devices are coming up. What is the way? Can we monitor the exchanges? Can we predict the threats based on the historical data? And can we come out with the enterprise protection? This is where machine learning should answer these questions for the highly connected devices. Now here, I am trying to propose that we have 3 quadrants. One is the prevention quadrant, one is the detection quadrant, and a response quadrant. In a typical network scenario, we have antivirus softwares, then we have some these log inspection monitoring softwares, and finally we have the firewalls. Now what is happening at the firewall level, we just observe in most of the industries I'm seeing, we are observing and then we are happy, okay, we are protecting so-and-so device, so-and-so rules are defined. And here the antivirus software is able to catch what is the compromised machine. But there's no lateral communication between the two. So the trend has to go towards complete incident analysis. Suppose my particular application, enterprise application is slow. Now I must analyze it from an end-to-end perspective. Is my machine compromised? Was there a network incident when this application went slow? What was the required bandwidth? How much was the traffic? So that complete incident analysis is coming up in the state-of-art tools now of cybersecurity. So please remember, prevention quadrant for antivirus, detection quadrant here at the monitoring level, and finally the response quadrant. When an attack is detected, you have to be intelligent enough for a real-time action. Generally in AI and machine learning research, we just talk about detecting attacks, IDS, IPS and all. But now you have to think about self-healing systems. I detected an attack, I need to work out the mechanism for that and then react to that attack so that my system is not damaged. So that is a concept of self-healing system coming up in this area. Now here, this table is a cloud. Basically for data being stored, being processed or under transit at cloud, confidentiality cannot be taken care at the cloud level. That we have to take care while using the cloud. And authenticity for the access, that also we have to define the rules. Other than that, integrity, availability and the non-repudiation, these are very strong points of the cloud computing. Okay, but we should never forget that cloud is basically being driven by few giants in the industry. So that monopoly, I should say, the technology should find a solution to kill that monopoly. Okay. Now here, in smart cities, we have a lot of data because of the IoT, and everybody looks for AI and machine learning. And I tell you, in the actual industry and actual day-to-day life of application, people finally some false positive or something like that happens, people curse. What is this AI? What is this machine learning doing? They expect magic out of it, but you need to know that you must handle it correctly to reduce the error rates. Okay, so that is the challenge ahead for all our upcoming smart cities. You will see a lot of blunders when the smart city projects are being implemented, this is going to, take a call on machine learning. Is IoT enabled by AI? Can I decrease the cost of the CPU? Is cloud computing really required, or edge computing will serve my purpose? That is a question coming up from the same industry. We were watching cloud came, so many giants came. Now they are into their own problems, and people are talking about fog computing, edge computing, so that lot of dependence on cloud is reduced. So I should say it is a lightweight layer of the cloud is edge computing. Okay? Here, okay. What is a quantum computer? Can anybody, what is the concept? Any thoughts? People heard of qubit? Huh?
It has more than 2 bits. We have a binary computer which has 2 bits, 0 and 1. It has more than 2 bits.
Yeah. A bit has 2 states in a conventional computer, whereas a bit in a quantum concept will have 2 power n states. So the result is the algorithms which had exponential time, they will be in the near future be solved using these quantum computers. Okay? But so many researchers have broken their head for solving these NP-hard and NP-complete problems using approximate, complete algorithm, approximate, incomplete. All those combinations people have worked out. Probably a tough time for them. A competitor has come for their solutions in these domains. I'm sorry you are not, probably it is not clear. The upcoming domains which are going to benefit from this include the supply chain optimization, robotic-based manufacturing, where a particular task is broken down to be executed by robot, and there are exponential possibilities. The search space is so high that is where this is going to help. Then some drug deliveries and design. Blockchain. Now I was happy to see when in blockchain we were seeing a concept of hash. When we study hash, sorting and searching, it is very boring in college days. At least I found it very boring. But then when it came back in blockchain, I was happy. Oh, at last I found something in the real world. And then we are forced to study now with a different perception, right? So any transaction, any block, if anybody tampers, you will get to know because of the chain effect. Okay, so a typical transaction steps are these. Now what happens to AI in this scenario? It will be decentralized across the blocks. And we heard of demonetization. Now data monetization is upcoming. That is, all these giants will not have a monopoly anymore. Data will be protected and owned in these blocks by the authors. And if anybody wants to access whoever it is, giant or mini giant or whoever, they have to pay. That is data monetization. But you are very, happy to know that it will be secure. The moment anybody tampers, you will get to know it. Now, cyber security has, will go a tremendous change due to the upcoming blockchain technology. For a very simple, these are the various use cases, very simple one. Suppose you are downloading some file from the net. Can you make out whether it is corrupted or not? You cannot make out unless the damage is done. But in blockchain, you can compare the hash value, the actual supposed to be the hash value, and what you are downloading. You can compare and you can get to know, and hence prevent. Similarly, many more such cases are there. I am not explaining those. Now, see, in my organization, it so happens I am maintaining a data center. Now, data center is, lot of infrastructure, lot of cooling, lot of power and whatnot, racks of servers and all. Now, will that take us long? No. We have to be efficient. Depending on the load, I should regulate the power requirement, right, on which we are spending so much of money, resources. So for that, there is a concept called predictive maintenance. Generally we go in a reactive maintenance mode, unless something really, unless my car stops, I will not get it repaired. That is called the reactive maintenance. Probably we see, okay, reactive maintenance took place because last time I didn't take it for servicing. Okay, so that is called preventive maintenance. Now, the industry is moving towards predictive maintenance. Depending on my profile and data, machine learning engines will be able to predict when the device is going to fail. It is in every domain, not only data center, even the flight systems, they are doing that. The heart of such a machine learning engine is for whichever signal, whether for whichever device data, whichever say some 40 parameters for a device I'm taking. For every parameter, I should be able to tell which is the right range and which is the wrong range. That is the basis of the efficiency of the machine learning engine. That we call signal-based condition indicators. When it happened, how frequently it is happening, and how frequently it has been happening. So this is the basic framework for introducing machine learning in predictive maintenance. This is applicable even for a PC also. If you enable your lock, get the data, identify right and wrong ranges, use the appropriate machine learning engine, you will be able to predict when your PC or laptop is going to go down. Believe me, I also didn't believe it. Unless I saw some case studies on the net, and then I started believing. Then I thought, okay, let me, give it a start for my own data center. Biometrics. Have you heard of this? The way a person walks, from a distance I can make out whether, I can do authentication. That is called gait detection. And similarly, your ECG can be used. Face recognition, biometric bots. When I'm typing on the keyboard, every individual has a, gap between how he or she types. So that is also a unique identification. Okay, so a lot of biometrics are coming up on all these new technologies, body odor. Oh my God, I was like, then electronic tattoos. Small skin patches from nanotechnology that will be stuck to the individual, as thin as hair, and you will carry your login credentials in that. Excellent. Then voice biometrics, of course, voice recognition has been around for quite some time, and physical behavior on the device. In addition to the gap between typing the keys, how much effort I am putting in typing. When I am happy, okay, it is like this. When I am angry, I am going to break the... So that is, behavioral thing. Okay, so many more things. This is, data storage technologies. Now here, data stickies. Again, nanotechnology based data stickers are going to, being developed. Those stickers you can stick to your monitor surface, and monitor is no more a dumb monitor. It can access that memory. I was astonished to, see that. Similarly, DNA storage, recently IBM has come up for DNA stored data. Then helium drive, helium density is being used to store more data. Then multi-cloud storage, liquid, that vanadium dioxide they are using for the negative and positive discharge for storing data. Oh God. Then, cassette tapes, whole world has written off tapes. Sony has not yet written off. They are coming up with, new magnetic cassette tape to hold 148 GB in 1 square inch. Okay, now cloud. Now what AI can do for cloud computing? Now here in cloud, we had platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, and software as a service, right? All of us are familiar with that to some extent, right? We may not have used, but we are familiar. And the deployment and the service model nomenclature. Now what happened to AI? Now AI is going to be provided as a service in next couple of years. It is already, for example, this Amazon Massey, it is, automatically discovering that your sensitive data, who all have access and how much it is prone for risk. That is already operational. Then Azure is basically, providing your applications can hear, touch, all those facilities, features are getting, available on the cloud. This is like when I can do it at a smaller scale, why I can't provide it at the cloud. But there are different challenges for providing at the cloud. Your bugs will be known at a much, larger scale. So you got to be very careful in that. That is the challenge we have for this technology. But of course, I think my take home should be cloud computing with blockchain and AI will write the future fate for all applications. The whole research is going in that direction. This is my last slide, friends. So I have collected all technologies, right? Now, when do we start? When we start any new work in our workplace, what is our starting point? You see, when we are doing some scheduled work, first step is let us automate that. So that, I get rid, I don't have to sweat every day. Okay, automation scripts written. After that, why I should run so many automation scripts? Let the system be intelligent enough to tell me if there is a problem. So I look for intelligent system. Thereafter, I go a little more greedy. I said no, system has to be smart. In the sense, if there is a problem, the system only should recommend some changes. I may go wrong in certain cases. There may be some flaws. But of course, we'll get up after making, correction to those bugs and flaws. So I hope this talk was of some use. Okay? So any questions from your end?
How far are we from using really blockchain into specific domains with AI and ML? I mean, really, there are research papers, but how far is it being used in defense or in real applications?
See, defense we just roll out. We don't even go to a cloud or any other place outside our organization. Okay? But of course, DARPA in US, they are implementing as a cloud with blockchain within their sister concerns.
Their private cloud.
Their private clouds. We don't do it in India. We will never do it in India for defense. It is like that. But yes, the private industry is coming up. Today I met Microsoft and Google teams. They are working on a very large scale for these technologies. These three. Cloud, blockchain and AI. Because blockchain is going to keep your data, under your control. Because whatever we are speaking to Siri, you don't know where it is going and it is being used as a training and things like that.
Yes.
Right? But here we have our control. Yes, please.
We are thinking about the deployment of AI in what the cloud services, as you said now.
Yes.
And also automation, intelligent, smart, also you are talking about these things.
Yes.
What about the security concept, ma'am?
Compulsory. No.
Security by default, if you adopt blockchain technology, security by default comes with the hashing and the chaining effect. Okay? If you do not adopt blockchain, then you have to take care of security at the data level.
Already those services are already available in the cloud.
Yes, they are
Security
available.
as a service is already
But
available.
at some point of maybe what I heard according to the knowledge and some speakers, not here but somewhere else. So they are telling that this is what the blind trust. You have to trust
Yes.
about the cloud.
Yes.
Otherwise, you need not use technology. They are telling.
But automation of trust is blockchain.
Blockchain.
I can sleep peacefully if my data is on blockchain. It will not be lost, it will not be tampered. But blockchain is still ahead to go. I think 2 days back IBM has launched something on blockchain, right? Not many people yet. But, people who are little mad like me, what I will do? I have a data center. I have centralized data of the entire organization in my hands. Somebody comes up. I did not raise for this sanction, but my sanction amount is showing a difference. He doesn't have trust on my storage. So logically, I'm going to implement blockchain for storage in my existing data structure. Okay, so the trust is automated to some extent. I mean, at your level, what effort you can put, in what fashion. I believe we should do it, and tomorrow when the new technology takes us a step further, we are anyway ready for that.
Thank you.
Okay?
I have one question, madam. We are
Yes, sir.
talking about all these technologies and all.
Yes, sir.
So we are starting with transition.
Yes.
But when we are talking about AI, ML, deep learning or blockchain or anything, the computational capacity or power is required.
Yes.
So most of the people working on workstations only. Still.
No, that is the misconception we have. Let me tell you, everybody is already on the cloud.
No, madam. Cloud is different.
Deep learning, if you are talking about deep learning, don't think about a workstation, please.
No, madam. My intention was in the sense like most of the people were still working on workstations only. So they were not habituated to put their data into the cloud
Yes.
with that particular thing.
Yes.
So for that particular transition itself, it takes a lot of time for us.
I agree with you, but nobody stops you from making your own private cloud.
Yes.
Within your university, you can make a private cloud.
Yes.
I'm sure every department must be having, such high computing facilities. Put them on private cloud and utilize that.
Imagine, madam, India, if we will take right now the DRDO or these people, whatever the projects which they have to implement, only 5 supercomputers were there, and recently in the CRO MX, it has been increased from 1 petaflops to 5 petaflops.
What is the end usage? You tell me.
They are working still.
Working is different, end usage, utilization, you tell me.
For that particular purpose only, madam. So they are working on that one project.
Private clouds, if you take up, the extent of utilization
Will be more.
cannot be matched with anybody. Why? Because, it is a mindset. First open your mindset within your department, within your university, form a private cloud. That itself is a project in itself. Right? And then encourage projects at that level within your university. What you can afford, what you can manage. Okay? And your own automation.
There was still, they were not giving the chance for virtualization. When we are talking about DevOps, like if we will take the university, where maybe they are going to have thousands of computers, each one with 500 GB hard disks.
So that is more of a policies. Okay, so it's not alone you or alone me. I giving a talk and the technology takes a U-turn. No, it has to be a team effort at the organization level. Of course, with these talks, people get aware.
Yes.
They will go and brainwash the management. No, we want this, right? When there are so many no's like this, definitely times will change. Right? But at the end of the day, your students have to face the world outside they have to hit the ground moving. People are already working in cloud. When they get into the industry, there's nobody to hold their hand, let me tell you. So implement at a level you can.
Thank you.
Backbenchers.
One question. Madam, one question.
Madam, one more query is there.
Yes, sir. Quantum computing based thing, the different states of quantum computer itself are volatile, let me tell you. Small perturbation will change your data. That is the drawback of quantum computing has now. Okay. You take it with a pinch of salt or whatever, that is the reality, and that is the reason why it does not come up on a large scale. First thing. And secondly, data encryption in light of quantum computing, I think that is a very, I should say, very far off concept. Right now. When my data itself in quantum computer is volatile in the sense not stationary, value is changing, what encryption I can comment on? That's my view, but of course people, I respect the people who are working in research in that area, that's fine. But quantum computer has not yet come up to, day-to-day life. This is the reason why it couldn't. Maybe a few months from now we'll get a solution. We should hope for a solution. Okay? Yeah, friends. Yeah, please, I'm happy backbencher.
What are the disadvantages of blockchain?
Disadvantages. See, first of all, implementation is very difficult. Okay? Implementation at the software level, whether you want to implement virtually or at the hardware level, implementation is very difficult. That I feel is the first and the last difficulty. Finally, if you abstract out and from a computer science point of view, if you see, it is basically a linked list. Right? But now when you start deploying it, policy, organizations, those things come into play. So within your resources, if you are trying to implement, I don't think there is any disadvantage. If you are going beyond, then the difficulty comes. Disadvantage I'll not say, I'll say difficulty. Okay? I hope next time when I come to this university, probably some blockchain thing would have been already in the market, then we can discuss in more detail. Anything?
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, nice audience. Good morning, I am Vishnu Rani. I request Professor Savin Pathiranam to present the memento.
Madam, once more photograph.
Look
That
here.
is better.
Look here. Madam, look here. Let's.
Why don't you come up, Siddharth?
Okay, look here.